Oh, hello. Welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Oh, see, now I was supposed to have the magazine showing when I did that, and that was my hilarious opening. Oh well, that didn't work. Stop the recording on this thing. Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Live in the den. Hell of a time lighting things this morning. Because this is what I've discovered. If I'm not wearing a black shirt, the camera makes everything darker because of the window back there. Anyways. Hello. Yeah, I know that was very smooth. And it also just occurred to me, I didn't really move my microphone up closer to me because 99% preparation, 1% perspiration. Hey everybody, though, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture, February 22nd. We're almost done with February. We're almost done with 2 months of this crazy mixed up year. Hope everybody's doing well on this Sunday morning. USA won gold in men's hockey and in women's hockey. So that's pretty cool. That just happened, I guess sometime this morning, because I know they're playing over there in Italy. I'm not sure how the time factor works there, but very cool to see that. Congratulations to those guys. So we got a few things today. We're going to chat about a few little pop culture items. We're going to look at some new releases that are out there that you might want to check out. We're going to do a few little reviews, and and that'll pretty much probably do it for this morning's stream. So let's jump in with, first of all, rest in peace to Robert Duvall. Happened earlier this week. Legendary actor on both TV and in movies. A lot of fine films that you should watch. Without a doubt, the man had a hell of a career as a character actor. And I mean character actor in the best possible meaning of character actor. Those are the folks that really, when it comes to acting, really shine. The leading men, the leading women, they kind of work off of, oftentimes anyways, they work off of charisma. They work off of presence. They work off of their face and their persona. The character actors have to jump into different characters and make them sort of live. It's a tough thing to do, but it's, in a way, it's real acting. Doesn't necessarily pay as well as being a leading man, but it's real acting. And he was one of the best. But great films. But I would say also seek him out in some of the early TV that he did. I've seen him in Route 66. He was in a couple episodes of that, different characters. I've seen him in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I've seen him in The Outer Limits. And when you watch those early TV appearances, a couple of them being in sci-fi shows, I think you could see he brought it all to every role that he played. Didn't matter what it was in. He brought a gravitas, a seriousness, a depth, and a professionalism that's really quite amazing, because obviously, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, it's kind of a goofy, sci-fi show. You could see a lot of actors going into something like that with just sort of like, I'll play this sort of alien role and whatever. It's a paycheck. I ain't going to take it that seriously. And he brings a gravitas to these things that's really impressive. So rest in peace, Robert Duvall. Godspeed. One of our great, great, great actors. Very sorry to see him go. So interesting crowdfund going on right now. I think it might be fully funded, but they're probably looking for a little bit more to make things easier, but I'm not positive. I'd heard it was, and then I'm not sure it was. So they're gathering funds to move the original restored Galileo shuttlecraft to the original series set tour in Ticonderoga, Ticonderoga, New York. Now that was where they did an early set of fan films for Star Trek. They would build, a different group would build sets in Georgia for Star Trek Continues. Those have been closed up. Those are gone now. But the original sets for that piece still exist. You can tour them in Ticonderoga. Shatner's done a lot of appearances up there, sitting in the captain's chair on the bridge. So the story of the Galileo is really pretty darn interesting. I won't go through it all, but essentially it was donated after the series was over, right? We now think, well, this is a piece of history. Obviously, somebody preserved it. It wasn't a piece of history. It was a prop for a canceled TV show. Got donated to a school for the blind. Put out on the playground. But it proved to be a little dangerous. Kids were kind of bumping into it and stuff. So it was purchased from them by a guy, well, really his parents, who were kind of wealthy, purchased by a guy who was a Star Trek fan, and it was put in the front yard of their house, which annoyed a lot of people in the neighborhood because it was like a ritzier neighborhood. And it started getting visited by Star Trek fans. So that made a problem. But of course, the other issue was this was built as an indoor prop, and it was now sitting at the school and at this house outdoors, exposed to the elements. It was getting kind of rough. So it ends up in a storage yard where it's still getting hit by the elements. Gets purchased by somebody who wants to restore it, who's a big fan, doesn't have the money to do it, sits in a storage yard even longer. Gets purchased by a fan who wants to restore it, moved to Ohio, still sitting outdoors. Thing finally gets tracked down by somebody who had the funds and the skills to restore this thing. Ends up, I want to say, in Maryland, gets fully restored, and I think went to the Smithsonian for display for a while. And while it was there on display, it was used in an episode of Star Trek Continues, where they did a continuation of Mirror Mirror that shows you what happened on the evil Enterprise after the transfer of people. There's kind of a mutiny. Pretty good episode. And ultimately, some of the characters are sent into exile, and they got to use the actual Galileo. Sorry, just about to sneeze. There we go. Okay, and so it was restored. Now it looks like it needs to be moved somewhere else. So the original series set tour wants it, which is, of course, the perfect place for it, and raising funds to do so. So if you go to, I want to say, Kickstarter, you want to go to Kickstarter, you could find this if you want to donate a few bucks. There's a few things you can buy, like a hat, but I mean, it's like a $40 donation, you get a hat. Not obviously paying $40 for the hat. But you could do that to help this happen so that it is preserved on some sets that are built to spec for the original series. It's, I'm at a point in life where, if I'm completely honest, I don't really want to do a lot of traveling. I don't really care about seeing the world at this point. I've seen pictures. I'm fine. I don't need to go to the Eiffel Tower at this point. There's maybe a few. I wouldn't mind going someplace, kind of out of the way and sort of spending a month kind of soaking up the local color, and things like that. That'd be kind of fun. I don't really care about seeing the sights, right? But that original set tour in Ticonderoga, I'd kind of like to do that. I would kind of like to walk around in the corridors of the Enterprise before I die. I hope it lasts for a good long time. But hopefully also the Galileo will one day actually be there and you could check it out. So very cool crowdfund. Great way to celebrate Star Trek's 60th anniversary if you have a mind to help them out. And speaking of Paramount, who kind of, in this point in time, sadly owns Star Trek, apparently their bid for Warner Brothers is still in the mix because they've upped the ante. And I guess one of the more activist sort of investors, and I don't mean activist in terms of politically, but a guy who likes to, get involved and get things done, has said, if you don't really give a serious look to their offer, which is probably better for stockholders at this point, there could be a lawsuit. So they are still looking. So that's still going on, man. That whole who's going to buy Warner Brothers, Netflix or Paramount. I don't know that I'm at a point now where I'm just waiting for great films to go into public domain, because I think that's the only way ultimately they're going to be watched, preserved, enjoyed, respected. I don't think any of the corporate cultures at any of these places have any respect whatsoever for the art, and not just on, the classics. I don't think they appreciate the art of B movies. I don't think they appreciate anything at all about anything at all. That's the vibe I'm getting from all these guys. They're kind of corporate barbarians when you get down to it. Everything's just something you could sell and exploit online for clicks and whatever. And I don't know, man. It's always been that way to an extent, but I think at least corporations understood that to make money, you needed to make something good that people would enjoy. And there was some desire to make something that was lasting, if for nothing else, that you could sell it for a longer time. And I don't think they really respect anything at all. They just pump crap out. And yeah, it's like, it's sort of a way they were caricatured for a long time on things, that these guys that are just money hungry, and you go, well, yeah, but these are smart businessmen. They know, I think they really are the caricatures now. They kind of become that way. So that's still up and about. And speaking of, and this is not entirely speaking of, because Garner's, I believe it's his daughter, is sort of involved in this on some level. But they are talking about making a new Rockford Files. I think Rockford Files is one of those must-see series from the past. There's a lot of fun TV shows from the past, and a lot of the stuff that's kind of retained a certain amount of pop culture juice. They're not actually necessarily the greatest TV shows that were ever made. They were fun, and there's a lot of nostalgia for them, like, the A-Team, Knight Rider, right? They're fun. But, when you're watching them, like in your 40s or 50s, you're kind of like going, oh man, these were definitely kind of for kids. They're a little silly. But there are some series from the past that I think really stand the test of time, and are ones if you're interested in old TV, there's some series you probably should watch. And Rockford Files, I think, is one of them. Hey, Man of War. Hail, sir. Welcome to the stream. So Rockford Files is one of them. I would say the three other series that I think are ones from that general era that I think you really should watch if you can. I would add to that Hill Street Blues, which was, to me, way better than NYPD Blue. I've watched parts of NYPD Blue. It did really well, and I know a lot of people love it, but I think Hill Street Blues was better. But Hill Street Blues did a lot for the sort of TV cop show genre, and it holds up pretty darn well. Barney Miller, because it's just so damn unique. I don't think there's any other. The closest thing you probably get to Barney Miller, because it had the same writer, was the first season of Night Court, which was very Barney Miller-esque. Once you get to, I think, the second season, it becomes more of a vehicle for Harry Anderson and his more sort of, madcap kind of comedy. And it becomes a little sillier as it goes. But the first season's a little more like Barney Miller, but it doesn't doesn't quite get there. Barney Miller, though, great comedy, worth watching, so unique. And I think the other one from that era that I would really put out in front of people is, again, another comedy, WKRP. That's a great show. Great show. One of the great episodes ever made, of course, the turkey drop, which I know gets pushed around a lot in November, but it's like, watch that friggin' episode. It's so well crafted and so many great lines in it and well acted as well. But Rockford Files, one of the really, really great ones. Canon, obviously. I love Canon, but I'm just talking sort of like if I was doing a class, like in a college, God forbid. If I was doing a class in college on TV from the late 70s, early 80s era, but yeah, oh dude, Canon's one of the ones I actually just wrote it in my, I keep a little notepad thing on my phone, about like DVDs that I want, so I can remember when I go to, if I go to like a Zia Records or if I'm online or something and I can find deals. And I just literally yesterday added several to my list. I don't know if that'll show up, but yeah, there's Canon right in the middle. I'm like, dude, I need to own Canon. And I haven't seen it for a while either. I love Canon. Anyhow, so Rockford Files, they're looking at doing a new one. Now, my general rule is I don't do remakes, reboots, reimaginings. I don't do sequels 30 years after the fact. I got burned on the Star Wars prequels. I don't do any more of that. And as a result, I'm a much happier person. It's cool if other people like them, watch them, have fun. I'm not doing it. So the chances of me watching, Man of War, middle-aged man driving a land yacht and shooting from the hip. Oh, dude. What I love about Canon, though, is the fact that William Conrad does lean into it. He knows he's fat. That's fine. He's cool with it. And he leans into the jokes. The one where he's in a wetsuit is one of the greatest episodes of TV ever made. So, but I'm probably going to skip Rockford Files. God bless everybody involved. Hope you do well. But I will say this. It looks like they're going to cast, as Jim Rockford, David Boreanaz, Angel from, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. He was in what was that show? Was it Bones? Was that it? And I'm like, I looked at it and I thought, he could probably do it. Like, I think the tough thing when you look, first of all, Garner was he was no spring chicken when he was doing the Rockford Files. He'd had a movie career, obviously TV with Maverick, and he'd done a few other TV shows. And if you look at Rockford Files, it's sort of like Maverick moved to 1970s LA. There's a lot of similarities in the characters. He's the guy who never wants to, he doesn't want to get involved. Not with something dangerous. He's a guy who's happy to follow people around and take some photographs, pay the bills, live his life. He's done time in prison. He just wants to live his life. So if he gets involved in something and the cops might be involved, nope. The mob might be involved, no thank you. Always gets drug into it and then has to figure things out. Maverick's a similar character. Maverick just wants to play poker, make some money and do well, and then he ends up getting dragged into helping somebody. But he's got that sort of heart of gold, so he lends himself to pitching in. But you look at him, that's a guy with he's got some miles on him. And you look at so many actors nowadays, and because you don't get as much smoking as we used to, because of people eating things better, whatever, they look a lot younger. So you grab an actor who's the same age as Garner, he might look 10 years younger than Garner. And I think that you need that age and those miles to make that character work. A younger Harrison Ford doesn't necessarily work as well for Indiana Jones. Though that's a character who lends himself to looking like he's been through it a few times, because the character has been through it a few times. You look at the dude playing He-Man in the Masters of the Universe movie, right? And you go, he looks like, way younger than Dolph Lundgren did when he played it. And in fact, he's a couple years older. It's just people have changed. I think also a lot, we know testosterone levels have dropped quite a bit. So I think that also has something to do with these guys who are in their 30s and 40s looking more boyish. They don't. Yeah. So Boreanaz, though, I'm like going, yeah, he could probably do it, actually. So it'll be interesting to see if he does well with it. And I think having, somebody from the Garner estate, so to speak, maybe involved on some level might keep it from going in a weird direction. I think a really good adaptation of the Rockford Files set in modern times could be really popular, because Rockford Files, that's a show that guys loved. I think a lot of women loved it too, but it's a masculine show, and it's about a guy who's, maybe barely middle class. When you get down to it, he's struggling. I think a lot of people could kind of glom onto a character like that. Smart, witty, charming. He'll get into a fight if he needs to. You got the car chases. I don't know what car they're going to give him nowadays, but I think something like that could really, really work if they do it well. And isn't that the mantra that we all say nowadays is, well, that could work if they do it right. And then we watch it and they go, well, they didn't do it right. So who knows what'll happen with that. But Lady Windland says, I'm just tired of remakes. Just show the reruns, guarantee. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. I've thought that too. If you slotted in Rockford File reruns in prime time nowadays, I wouldn't be surprised if it pulled a pretty fat audience. And I don't mean fat in terms of guys like me, but I mean a pretty big audience, because it would be a real breath of fresh air. Also, let's be honest, who's watching TV nowadays? Normal network TV. Now, I don't know, this might be ended up being a streaming thing, but even with streaming, I think if you're talking about TV shows and movies, it's an older and older audience, because so many younger people are watching TikTok, they're watching podcasts and stuff like that. Not saying they don't watch any movies, they do, but maybe not to the degree that we did when we were their age. So aiming for a slightly older audience, not necessarily a bad idea. And when you look at the younger generations, how some of them are, they're starting to pull attitudes that you associate with older demographics, right? Which is not to say they're suddenly very politically conservative, but like there was a new thing out, polling of, I think it was Gen Z, finding that they're skipping going out and drinking. They're skipping, screwing around a lot. And what are they choosing instead? Sleeping. So you're going, they sound like old people. And my daughter and her friends, they're like, we always laugh because, they're all basically, they're ready to go to bed by like 9 o'clock. They're done. We're like, God, you guys are in your 20s and you're so old. Of course, I'm at that point now in my life too. So, so the people in their 50s and people in their 20s starting to become a lot more alike. I think some of those folks, they're looking at the world around them. I think for one thing, they're oftentimes misinformed about the world around them. That they think things are uniquely terrible problems in the world that, no, man, they were there. And I think watching older things, probably good for them. I mean, Rockford Files, it's the 70s, inflation, right? In the opening, you see him looking at the price of meat, in the grocery store, like, son of a bitch, I think a lot of people, they get it, right? Right now in time, they understand that it works. They see a grittier Los Angeles. I think younger people could really dig the Rockford Files if they gave it a chance. And maybe that's why they're trying to do a new version of it now. And if they can hit that same kind of attitude and vibe and feel of it, and translate it into 2026, I think it could potentially do well, but we'll see. Man of War says, I forget what video it was, but they showed a photo of current Paul Rudd and Wilford Brimley in Cocoon being the same age. Yeah, exactly. People look a lot younger. We also don't have the great voices we used to have. You know, if you think about some of the great sportscasters and their voices, you think about some of the actors with just great voices. And the reason is they don't smoke. People don't smoke like they used to. So, you know, less lung cancer, but not as great of voices is probably a good thing, you know. But you go back and you listen to some of the great voices of the past, a lot of character. There's a little roughness to them, a little deeper. And you go, wow, there were some great voiceover people, great voice actors back in the day that we don't quite have today. And I don't mean voice acting exactly like in cartoons, but just, you know, people doing voiceovers on commercials. I see a lot of modern commercials. And the people talking have these really high voices, and they're very grating. And it's like, oh my God. Friggin' give me a headache. I mute everything anyways, but I mute it a lot quicker now. And you're going, dude, go watch you could go YouTube. You could watch commercials from the 70s and 80s. Dude, there's a huge difference. And I'm like, get people with lower tones, whether they're women or men. They're not as jarring and grating. They're easier on the ear. That's who you want doing your that's who the spokespeople you want. They don't have high-pitched voices. High-pitched voices are rough on the ear. Don't do that. Anyways, my wife has to hear me complain about that all the time. But yeah, they're both 51 at the time. Yeah, Wilford Brimley. Yeah, well, I mean, Wilford Brimley probably went through some stuff too. I think people have much easier lives than they did back then. But there you go. David Boreanaz as Jim Rockford could work. I think the issue might be, I don't know that he has the charisma that Garner had. And if you're not going to have a Stuart Margolin to play Angel, that could be tough too. A lot of charisma in those guys in putting those roles across, and other people on the show as well, Dennis, etc. But it's not just who you're going to cast as Garner or as Rockford, who you're going to cast as Dennis, who you're going to cast as Angel, because you kind of have to have those two characters at a minimum. Beth Davenport. I don't think they make women like Beth Davenport anymore. In all honesty, I just don't. I don't think we, you know, I don't know that that's going to come naturally as somebody. How do you cast all those roles? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I know that I believe his daughter is involved, so I hope it does well, and I hope she keeps him on the right path. But, you know, Hollywood's tough with that. I mean, The Rocketeer only became what it was as a movie because, you know, Stevens was like right there on set a lot, and they didn't want him there, but he snuck on anyways and quashed a lot of changes that Disney wanted to make. For example, they wanted to put The Rocketeer in more of like a astronaut helmet. They wanted to get rid of the helmet and more like an astronaut. So Disney did everything they could to destroy that movie. Dave Stevens, working with the director, Joe Johnston, they got it right. It can happen, but it's not easy. You got to be on them every second, you know. And for Stevens, like Stevens didn't have any control, really. I mean, per se, he just had to be creative and clever about getting in there and making, you know, no, do this way, do that. You know, so it could have gone really south. I don't know that she'd have any kind of control like that, but maybe she could keep it true to what her father did. And on similar news, a fella by the name of Jacob Elordi, I have not seen anything he's in, maybe cast as James Bond. So another one where I look at this guy and I'm like, he looks like a baby. He looks like a baby. Apparently, I looked it up, about the same age as Sean Connery when he became Bond. Dalton and Moore were both quite a bit older when they became Bond. They were in their 40s. And I know they wanted to pick somebody younger who could be with the series for a good long time. Although I think Moore was with it the longest, you know, even though he was the oldest, kind of getting the role. And granted, the last couple Bond films, he wasn't quite as spry as he had been, but he's still friggin' Roger Moore, loaded with charisma, so I don't really care. But, so new guy, maybe. I don't think it's been confirmed. He's Australian. which I guess is fine since we keep hiring British actors to play Americans. I guess they can hire Australians to play the British. But we'll see. We'll see what they do with that. But that's another series, man. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It fell apart while Daniel Craig was in there. After, I think most people were pretty down with the first one that he did. I think it did pretty well and people liked it. But Bond's a tough one. It's not the right world for that anymore, quite, that we had. It's a tough one. And honestly, some of the books, I've read 3 of the Bond books, and I'll be honest with you, I liked From Russia with Love. I liked about half of Goldfinger, and the second half I didn't really care much for. I can't think. Oh, and I did read Casino Royale, and I was like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. So those movie adaptations, they brought something extra to it, honestly. Not to say anything against, God, I just blanked on his name who wrote it. That's terrible. But nothing against him. He created the character and did a great job with it. But I think the movies added something to it. Oh, Ian Fleming. God, I knew my brain was going to get there eventually. I think they really added something to the character. The Goldfinger movie, Goldfinger, the book, I don't know if you've read, I did a review thing of it. And it gets weird in the second half. It does not make much sense. And I think he was maybe phoning that one in a little bit when he wrote it, but we'll see what they do. But why not do something? Yeah. Like Lady Wendelin was saying, you can do new stuff. I don't know when, I think the Bourne stuff was based on books, and I don't know when they came from, but the character was more or less new in movies, and they did very well. You can introduce new characters in movies. They're so weird about it, and I think it keeps kind of blowing up in their faces. All right. New acquisitions. Oh, and I guess I did have a 007 logo. I was like, I don't think I had a image for that. Apparently I did. Now it looks like it's pointed right at me. Hey, man, I'll hand over the cash. Just don't hurt me. So new acquisitions. I got a few that I'm going to actually kind of review a little later in the stream. But I did want to show these off. I'm always on the lookout for old issues of Film Facts magazine from the 90s. It actually ran into the 2000s. Covered a lot of, the pop culture that I love. B-movies, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, but also, just other stuff from the golden age of Hollywood. I'm always looking for magazines at a good price because some of them get a little expensive, and I found a batch and got them delivered. And dude, these things, you can't really necessarily tell it looking at this, but I don't think these things were hardly ever opened or read. They almost look brand spanking new. You can see they're black and white, but great articles, and kind of also fun because you get a whole bunch of ads for VHS tapes, the tough stuff to get back in the day. Gert Oswald, great cinematographer. Super stoked that is in there. Here's Sinister Cinema presents Sinister Six Gun. So if you wanted to get weird little VHS tapes of B movies and stuff, this is one of the ways you had to do it. Unless you had a place like the Video Park where I worked, where you could get those things ordered for you. It was tough. And so these are a great way to show off how people got weird stuff before there was a YouTube. There you go, the table of contents. So I got 4 of these. And I cannot wait to read through them. Look at that. Silent Space Cinema. Oh, that's awesome. So this has early experiments in sci-fi cinema. El Santo, and in this corner, El Mascarado de Plata. The Haunting and Other Wise Tales, an interview with Robert Wise. A.K.A. Sean Smith, an interview with Shirley Patterson. Flash Gordon, Cruising the Cathode Ray. The Great Gildersleeve. Nice. I love that. It's a great radio show. And they did some fun movies with it, too. A Fuller Review, an interview with Sam Fuller, Delmar Watson before and behind the camera. I swear I just did a video review of something Delmar Watson was involved with. I could be wrong. Whoops. I'm knocking things over. And then we got this one. You got a little Frankenstein on the cover. And we got Abbott and Costello going, I believe, to Venus to meet the ladies. But yeah, if you're into old, I guess it was Mars, sorry. If you are into old movies, sci-fi, fantasy, horror especially, the golden age of Hollywood, you cannot do better than Film Facts. Look at that, model kits for sale. Which, funny enough, one of the things that I ordered this week that arrived pretty quickly, was from Monsters in Motion, and their little catalog came with it. And like, dude, I opened it up. I'm going, God, this reminds me of Film Facts. Yeah, I love that stuff's still around and out there for people to buy. I haven't made a model in years and years and years, but they're still out there. So we'll talk about a few other things that showed up in the den a little bit later. But right now I want to jump into new campaigns that are going on that you might want to check out. I brought this one up before, but it's, I think it wasn't maybe actually up for crowdfunding just yet. Weird Tales, a graphic novel of bizarre and unusual stories. Essentially, it's a comic adaptation of the old Weird Tales magazine, which is more a pulp magazine with stories and some illustrations. There are 3 covers by Eric Powell, and that one's $49. Colton Worley, $49. And the great Kelly Jones, $75. You got to pay a little extra for Kelly Jones. You have, here's the stuff they're adapting. Chamblot by C.L. Moore, adapted by writer Blake Northcott and artist George Quadros. Colors by Zach Atkinson, lettering by Taylor Esposito. Skulls in the Stars, starring Solomon Kane, by Robert E. Howard, of course, adapted by writer Steve Niles and artist Andrew Lunatic. Michael Avallone's The Man Who Walked on Air, adapted by David Avallone, the writer and son of Michael Avallone, and Robert Hack. Ray Bradbury's The Sith, adapted by Weird Tales editor Jonathan Mayberry and artist J.K. Woodward. Allison V. Harding's The Damp Man, adapted by writer Nancy A. Collins and artist Marco Finnegan. An original Lovecraft mythos story by Peabody Award-winning screenwriter and producer Rodney Barnes and artist Lucas Kettner. Anthony M. Rudd's Ooze, the first story published by Weird Tales in 1923, reimagined, that always scares me, by Weird Tales president, director, and producer John Harlicker and artist Zach Atkinson. Dr. Satan vs. Jules de Grandin by writer James Aquilone and artist Dave Schwartz. The Cthulhu Project by writer Richard Crepit and artist Evie Cantata. This is all slated for a December of 2026 delivery. Looks cool. If you go to Kickstarter, I believe, you could probably see some more samples of art and things like that, but you might want to go check that out. It's a cool concept, though. Also, I think just taking old pulp magazine and adapting some of those stories as comic, it's been done before, but I think it's a cool thing. Weird Tales, God, it gives you this glimpse into a time period of just, yeah, it's pulp. It's sort of, it's not literature, you might say. And I'm not making fun of literature, because that stuff's really important too. But amazing number of people writing, an amazing number of artists working at that time, because you hadn't gotten into, they weren't able to reproduce photography very well in things. So you had people, painters, people who worked, with pen and ink, doing some amazing stuff. You look at an old, like a news counter from the old days, and it's just astounding the amount of labor that artists put into producing all this stuff. and how many options you had for reading material back in the day. We know that we're now looking at a generation that is quite frankly illiterate in a lot of ways coming up right now. They have not learned how to read. Functional illiteracy is very high in the United States right now. Peaked more or less in the 80s and started going down when they stopped using phonics to teach kids how to read. And also just stopped expecting kids to read, understand things, talk about them, etc. You still got kids who do that in some schools, but there's so many that just, they don't give a crap. You look back, though, at the 1930s and 40s, when literacy was not super, super high either. It was a lot lower than it was in the 80s. And yet, they produced a ton of writing. And you pick up one of these old pulp magazines, read through it, and you're like going, that could be a movie. That could be a movie. This short story could be a movie. If there's people out there who want to adapt things, a lot of it's in the public domain now. You want to adapt things for film. You want to adapt things for a comic book, whatever. Go looking through some of this stuff. Now, you should probably also make sure it is public domain, because if you could throw some shekels to the original author or his heirs, that would be really the good thing to do. But there's so much material out there, even if it's just inspiration for you, that you could find in these old books, and you could find them on Project Gutenberg. You could find a bunch on the Internet Archive. You know, it's an amazing amount of material out there people could use. I'm glad to see that these folks are doing it, and hopefully doing it right. She seems to have lost her clothes. You know, when you're dealing with gorillas wearing odd headgear, you do lose your clothes sometimes. And it's a tragedy, and something we don't talk about enough in the modern world. Gorillas with interesting headgear. Manowar says, maybe this fares better than the new heavy metal. I've stopped 3 issues in and I'm quite disappointed. Yeah, I got the first issue and I liked it okay. It wasn't bad. But I was like, it ain't cheap. And I'm buying a lot of other things right now in terms of indie comics, in terms of back issues. I'm trying to fill out runs for things and all that. I'm going, yeah, it's not awesome enough for me to definitely buy it. So I kind of stopped at issue 1. Didn't get issue 2. They're up to what, 3 now, I think? Well, you said 3 issues in. I think they're up to 3. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, it's a different attitude. And it's not like heavy metal was being produced or Metal Hurlant was being produced by arch conservatives or something. It kind of tells you how much the culture's changed, that most of those things were being produced by folks who were, you know, liberal, kind of left wing. But they had a certain attitude towards art and stuff that was good. I mean, it worked. They produced good art. You might have different political opinions. You'd read stuff and you'd kind of come away going, well, I don't agree with this, but that was awesome. That was great. That was a good story. It looked, you know, the art was beautiful, whatever. Now that same crew trying to produce stuff, they keep on failing. They don't have, I don't know, man. I don't think they have artistic souls. I think they just have very left-wing politics. And because left-wingers dominated on a lot of that stuff and would put other left-wingers in charge as they left, their assumption was, we're left-wingers. We have an artistic sense about things. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. And I think, too, the old left-wingers, if they found a right-winger who produced some pretty awesome art, they published it. You know, they didn't really care. They'd argue about stuff and, you know, go to a bar, smoke cigarettes, drink, argue, you know, say goodbye, and it was fine. It wasn't necessarily that big of a deal. Now it's like much more rigid. And I think they've just, I think the new crop that's come in, they can't carry a torch to what their ancestors, with maybe less extreme views, but similar views, were able to do in art. I think that's one of the reasons there's the control of culture is sort of slipping away from them. I don't know that it's suddenly coming into the hands of other people with different political opinions, but the folks who dominate, they can't produce stuff that is widely popular for people, because I don't think it tells stories they're interested in. I don't think it tells stories. Stories need to give you a glimpse of reality, or a deeper reality. They can sometimes do that by being parodies and satires of giving you something exaggerated or showing you what isn't real, and you can see it isn't real, and that's kind of points you towards what is real. They just kind of produce really boring propaganda. And I don't think the art's that great oftentimes too. Yeah, the stuff crept in. Yeah, exactly, man. Manowar says Ford just came out. There you go, man. I summed it up for you without even actually reading it. I know, man. It's like I said a while back, the people who made MASH back in the 70s and 80s were solidly left-wing, which is funny because the guy who wrote MASH, not as much, but they were solidly left-wing. And their messaging did creep into episodes. Without a doubt, it crept into episodes, sometimes very clumsily. But they also produced funny lines. They also produced some compelling storylines about individuals. And I think that might be the biggest difference. With a lot of left-wingers 50 years ago, we're still individualistic. The ones today are collectivists through and through. And collectivism is a lie. Reality is individual. Whether it's a human individual, a dog individual, we all know all dogs they kind of have different personalities, or frankly, each object, there's dozens of these made, but this is an individual object in and of itself. Same mold, but it's independent. It's not linked to every other Coco the Clown that was made. Reality is individual. Collectives are they can be useful categories for certain things, but they're all abstract and make-believe. There are no collectives. They do not exist. And when you try to define the world in collectives or write stories about collectives, they will never ring true because it's not real. It's a lie. Hopefully people will start rejecting that more and more and more. Hopefully. But there's Weird Tales. Got a little off trail there, but I think in an important way. So you might want to check that one out. This is something else that came up. I thought it looked pretty cool. Dick Turpin and the Restless Dead. So Dick Turpin is like a highwayman character from the UK, from Britain, England, actually. Let's just put it England. Written by Steve Tanner, art by John Erasmus, John Robbins, letters, Paul H. Birch doing the editing. It is published by Time Bomb Comics. Now, there are two previous Dick Turpin graphic novels that they made that you can pick up on this as well. And again, I believe this was Kickstarter. You can get a digital copy for $10. You can get a print copy for $17. It actually was in pounds, but it translates to $17. Not sure what the shipping would be if it's coming from the UK. But June 2026 delivery, and essentially you got Dick Turpin, the highwayman, going up against zombies or the undead of some kind. I thought the art looked pretty darn cool and might be something you might want to check out. A lot of zombie stuff, a lot of horror stuff, but it works. And it does get down to deep primal fears about the world you live in. That's why it resonates. Red Koi, title published by Alterna Comics, went on hiatus for a while. Now it is back with issue number 8. You can get the older issues still at Alterna Comics, floppies. Alterna's pretty darn affordable, so you could probably grab all 7 of those without spending an absolute fortune. And I've heard good things about Red Koi. I have not read it, but you might want to give it a look. It will be available for pre-order. Oh, I say will be because I prepared this a few days ago. It was available for pre-order on February 20th. So you could already pre-order this one. Writing and art by Tyler Wentland. Colors and letters by Nick Welch. So Red Koi has sort of a Asian feel, fantasy kind of feel to it. Really cool stuff. I've seen imagery and all that. You might want to check that one out if you are into that kind of stuff. I spoke last week of Nacelle doing a Star Trek bridge. It's in pieces. It's going to take a lot of room up. It's expensive, easy to pass by for me, even though it looks really cool. Of course, we're talking about the only USS Enterprise that matters, the first one. But apparently Factory Entertainment is also working on one, slightly smaller scale. Not sure if it's modular from that image. I can't tell. But I saw this on, there's a Twitter account you might want to check out called Collecting Trek. And I saw that they posted an image of this. I don't know that there's much information about it beyond that, but you might want to, maybe if you're on Twitter, you might want to subscribe to Collecting Trek. They might be on some other platforms as well. You can look around and they might give you some more information, but that's cool. The Cell one is great. It looks really nice. And I'm just going, I am so glad I do not have space for this because it'd be a great temptation. So here's a cool comic from the past that Fantagraphics is putting out in a collection. This will be volume 1 of The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc. Oh, Blanc-Sec. Sorry. Adele Blanc-Sec. Coming out July 2026, $30. And basically, it is a woman fighting supernatural terrors in 1911 Paris, the Belle Epoque period. There is a little sample. I think the art's really cool. I like that style a lot. It could be very cool. You might want to check that one out. Definitely caught my eye. Again, supernatural perils. But the Belle Epoque was a really cool period design-wise. And like I said, I think the art they have there looks like it will work well with that period. 2 more things to talk about here, and then we'll talk about some reviews. McFarland is going to have a Christopher Reeve Superman up for pre-order March 5th, based on the original film from 1978. And I'm almost certainly going to order it. We'll have to see what the price is, unless the price is crazy, which it could be. But that is something I have wanted to sort of add to my collection because Christopher Reeve Superman, one of my favorite things in the whole world. Dude, I've said this on other streams, I'll say it again. When he first becomes Superman, puts on the costume, starts saving people, you get that music. Oh man, it actually kind of sends chills through me seeing him, and that music in general just gets me. That music, John Williams music, it just gets me. So it's something I've wanted. And there have been a couple others that were made that I haven't gotten. You can find them on eBay. It's like, it's a little pricey. We'll see. I don't know what the price is going to be on this one. I hope it's reasonable because I really would like to get that. And the other thing, I thought I had an image for that, but apparently I don't. Leprechaun, the horror film from way back in 1992, is getting a new release from Lionsgate Limited. So you got your 4K, Blu-ray, blah, 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 blah. But also, they're releasing it on VHS. VHS copy of Leprechaun. $30, which if you kind of look at the old pricing, right? When videotapes went to about a $20 sell-through in the late 80s, if you adjusted for inflation, it'd be a lot more than 30. So it's actually a pretty reasonable price for a videotape if you look at it that way. But I'm not like a Leprechaun guy. I don't really go for that kind of horror that much. But there's a part of me going, yeah, but it's a newly produced VHS tape. I feel like I should get that. I'm hoping some stuff that I really do like a lot comes out on VHS. Hope it works. There is definitely, I think you look at cultural signals, right? I think a cultural signal right now is people going back to physical media. DVDs, CDs, there's people doing cassette tapes. Of course, vinyl records was a big surprise and it really took off. My daughter has a bunch by new artists. That's become a thing. And vinyl, frankly, has a better sound. So vinyl takes up a little more room, but a much better sound than you get on streaming. And then, so streaming doesn't necessarily give you the best quality. It's convenient. But now we're seeing companies, they're editing things out. They're changing things. They're censoring what they put out on streaming. And I think a lot of people don't like that. And they don't like the fact that they bought a bunch of games and then one day, whoever, they bought them from goes, yeah, those are all gone now. Sorry. Well, if you look in the fine print, you didn't technically own it. They're going, wait a minute. I paid a lot of money for that. I didn't own it. Physical media. So it's making a comeback. And I think that shows a cultural shift happening. People are getting used to streaming, digital, whatever, the internet is a useful tool, but they're starting to really understand the limitations of it. They're starting to see the dangers of social media, etc. And they're starting to shift a little bit. Not everybody, but a lot of folks are shifting. I think AI, so-called, is going to maybe increase the pace of that. As people go, this isn't, it's not right. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't feel right. It's cute, but I think people are seeing a lot of the dangers. And you're getting more people sort of, it's a good tool for certain things. Let's maintain that, but I don't want this stuff to dominate my life anymore. So the fact they're putting out a new VHS tape, I think, is part of that, because how many VHS players are there out there? I got 3. 2 that function well. I think 1 that doesn't. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of cool. Let's talk about some new stuff that showed up in the den. I got a delivery. Very happy about it, too. From Fabrizio Aiello. I love that name. That's a proper Italian name. And it is Horace H Hoover, number 4. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Comes in this very attractive brown paper sleeve. The last ones did too. Yes, I kept it because I just thought it was so neat. I got this bumper sticker. Tired of fighting Washington monsters? Yeah, I think we all are. Vote Horace H Hoover. Couldn't resist on that one. I would have bought one of the figurines, but I already did that a long time ago. There's a bookmark. There's a sticker in there as well. But how about the book? So this is issue 4 of 5 issues. So there's one more to look forward to. This one is sort of the end of the story arc that began in the first issue involving the Smoke Man. When I first read Horace H. Hoover, he's so he's this guy here who does in fact have a vacuum cleaner canister on his head. A little bit odd, okay? A little bit odd. Works well with the character, and that's the important thing. He's a occult detective working in New York. And so obviously it's an occult tale. It involves magic. It involves demons. When I read through that thing, and I got to a particular issue where he goes to this secret library, and it was one of the most amazing 2-page spreads I've ever seen in a comic book. And I remember going, this dude should be writing like Doctor Strange. And I only say that because you go, and it's sort of we're sort of wrong when we think that working for Marvel or DC is the big time. It may have been the big time once. It ain't been the big time for a long time, in my opinion. It just isn't. They produce some pretty miserable stuff. There's some gems in there, I'm sure. But a lot of the stuff they produce, not that impressive. But in the mind of somebody my age, Marvel and DC should be producing some of the best stuff. They got the resources. They got the infrastructure. They should be. So you kind of go, this guy ought to be working for them. Why aren't they hiring somebody like this to do this work for them? I'm frankly glad they don't, because I like the fact that he's doing Horace H. Hoover and not some character that somebody is going to come along and screw up later. But so this one basically ties up this story. You get the interior art. Yeah, right there. That dude, that big dude, friggin' love them. Man, quirky characters, but quirky characters that work. That's important, and it's not easy to do all the time. But it gets to a good conclusion, but not necessarily like a yay, happy, we win 100% conclusion. But it's a conclusion that makes sense, and it's satisfying. And what are we going to get in the next episode? We'll see. Maybe it's maybe there's going to be some carry on of this. Maybe it's going to be something newer. It is called The House of 1,000 Rooms. I love it. Very evocative. But I also wanted to show off this little, sadly, sort of fake ad. Superheroes RPG game box. Yeah. Looks like a certain game produced by TSR back in the day with the Horace H Hoover stuff. And on the other page, if you ever played that game, you'll recognize that little map there. Yeah, I told him on Twitter, I'm like, I hate to tell you this, sir, but that needs to become real really, really soon. Here's one of Horace H Hoover's buddies, Slurp. But it's good stuff. If you've never read Horace H Hoover, go find him, go check him out. If you love occult, supernatural, it's a little quirky. There's humor, but it's not like ha 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 all the time. Some great stuff that gets into, like, you know, you could, and if you ever listen to any of ILO's podcasts and stuff or videos like on YouTube, you know that he's educated in like the, you know, demonology and that stuff. So it's like, it's not like a rank amateur just making crap up. You know, it's got a little bit more to it. There's, you know, there's symbology. You got this weird dude who has like a city of, there's some really great ideas in here. Really great ideas. And it's really well written. Love the art. Horace H Hoover, number 4 of 5. When the number 5, you know, funding thing comes up, obviously you can get catch up stuff. But if you go to his site, go to the shop, you can get the issues 1, 2, and 3 of the comic book. Check them out, man. Horace H Hoover. Right now, it's tough competition for what my favorite comic of this year is, honestly. New comic that I've gotten. It's right in there with Wraith of God 3, and right in there with the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is Perfect 10, number 6 from Genuine Comics. Finally read, I got the digital copy. Haven't gotten the print copy yet. But I got the digital. So I'm like, okay, read the digital. Now this is issue 6 of a 6-issue series, basically. Although the character will come back. And that's kind of addressed in Perfect 10 number 6. So basically, we had the big fight, the big culmination of the Perfect 10 story in issue number 5, right? This is superhero stuff. She is this basically a clone, who's an assassin. And so in the storyline, I talked about this, I think, a little bit last time around. You have this government organization makes these assassins and sends them out to deal with basically supervillains. The supervillains band together to deal with it. They launch this attack on the facility housing them, and most are destroyed, but she manages to survive. And she manages to retain a memory of what she's done, because generally speaking, they come back from a mission, memory is wiped. Okay, so they're cold-blooded, etc. That's not her now. She's got a memory, and she's a human being. And so superheroes get involved. There's a big battle between the supervillains and the superheroes. Of course, Perfect 10 is involved. But, you know, she doesn't necessarily want to be a hero. She wants to know about her past. She wants to make up for past misdeeds and stuff. But so in issue number 6, we're in the aftermath. And monthly comic book series always did this. You'd have 4, 5, 6, whatever issues on an arc, and then you'd always have sort of a follow-up issue. it's a little lighter. We kind of sum some things up. Maybe it's a little bit funnier because we just went through some heavy stuff. It's a little bit like that in this one. We have her dealing with this superhero team called Safeguard, and sort of like there's just stuff to work out between her character and them, between her character and herself. What's she going to do next with her life, etc. It sums it up. It wraps it up really nicely. You know, if you just read this issue on its own and you hadn't read the others, great art. You know, there's some good stuff in there, but you'd be a little bit lost. It wouldn't necessarily have an impact on you. If you've read the series, it's a really good cap to the series, and it leads to the next phase, which I'm not sure when that's all coming out. Relatively soon. But you want to check that out. Genuine Comics, if you like superhero stuff, Genuine Comics is some great stuff. And Perfect 10 is a great series. One of my favorites. And again, it's really up there right now for what's my favorite book. Last year, I did like, here are my favorites in December, like favorite toys, favorite comics, whatever. This year, I'm like, okay, you need to keep track of this stuff as you go. So you're not trying to sort of sort it all out at the end of the year. So I got a little list and I'm sort of like slotting things in, you know, and I got them in a 1, 2, 3 position, but I'm like, it's going to change. I know that's going to probably change as I go, but we've had some really solid, we're February and I've had some really solid indie comic stuff delivered to my door. And I got the Kolchak comic is coming pretty soon. Some good stuff being produced out there. Don't worry about the big two. They're not even that big anymore when you get right down to it. There's a lot of great American comics that are being produced. A ton. You just got to go look for them. And maybe you got to pay a little extra for them. I think it's worth it. So, Perfect 10, number 6, awesome. Horace H Hoover, number 4, awesome. Good stuff. You want to check those out if you get a chance. Let's look at the chat here for a moment. Man of War says, the end of this month is tied up in the final Hero Quest reproduction expansion I plan to buy. Yeah. With property tax due to... Yeah. I saw something. I saw that. I thought, yeah, Hero Quest was cool. I didn't totally get into it, but I knew somebody who had it, played it a little bit. Hero Quest was really cool. Marvel Phase Rip was solid. Phase Rip really was solid. It was a great game and a great system as well. And Manor says, I'm locked into Kenneth Roquefort's Grokken. It feels directly ripped from the pages. Grokken is one that, like, when I first started getting back into things, I see it and I'm going, not sure. And I didn't end up getting it. And that was actually, I think, maybe like, what are we on with Grokken now? Is it like number 3? I think that was even number 2. And I'm like going, I need to get number 1, number 2. I passed it and I'm like going, I see it. I see the new one come up and I'm going, oh, I should have gotten into this. I should have done it. It looks really, really good, you know, but with each additional one, it's like, now it's going to cost more to get the others. Rennie's Fiendish is another one. I'm like, that looks really cool. It's a little more of a manga style, you know, which I'm not as into, but it looks really cool. She's a great artist and she seems really cool too. If you just follow her like on Twitter and stuff. And it's another one where I'm going, oh man, I wish I already dived in. I don't know if I can justify it yet. Maybe we'll see one of these days. Okay. Couple other deliveries. Now, one of them I'm going to unbox. One of them I'm not. The one I'm not going to unbox, because later today I'm going to film a video unboxing it for Friday, is from McFarland Toys. And of course, I always have to play with the reflections on the plastic there, but it is Blackhawk. And you know what? I think face-wise, I know it's going to be a little blurry. They did a fantastic job. A lot of armament as well, by the way. Back of the box, we have a nice image of Blackhawk. That reminds me a lot of the ones from like Who's Who. I don't know if it actually is or not. Can't wait to break into this dude, but I think McFarland did a very solid job on this Blackhawk. it's another one where I was like, will I or won't I? Will I or won't? I don't really. God, I love that 40s look. Yeah, I did it. I gave in and I did it. And frankly, I'm glad I did because it looks fantastic. The other one I grabbed from Boss Fight Studios, Hero Hacks, Flash Gordon, 3 3/4 inch. And we're going to open this dude up. And one of the big reasons is because it's easy. You got a nice, easy plastic thing that this fits into, so you don't have to rip anything up. To get to it, Flash Gordon, King of the Impossible. And you notice on the back, they also show the Prince Baron. There's also one of these. It's about $45. He's in the white shirt. Comes with a lunchbox. I did not get that one. Let's see. Now, can I open this up without it making a horrible racket? That wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad, but getting him out of this plastic might make a horrible racket. But at least we could look at it without, let's take that off there. Put my hand behind it. There you got Flash Gordon. Got the sword. Got the, the sort of kind of a laser rifle. I think, I'm trying to think where that was from. If that was just from Ming's Palace or what. Couple hand change outs so we can hold stuff. And then we got the laser rifle there and the stand. So this is the thing I got from Monsters in Motion. The shipping was a little rough. The shipping was a little rough. And I was another one where I'm going, and now I want to show it off on a stream. I'm going to do it. Oh, God, can I get that dude out of there? This new plastic they use, dude, it's like those plastic cake, what do we call them? Not pans, but containers, you know, that like you open them up and people can hear it like 3 states away. It's like this super thin, crappy plastic they use for everything nowadays. So there we go. Wish I could get it to a slightly better focus. I don't know if I could cover up. I'm trying to hold him and cover up the light at the same time. I think it's a pretty nice piece of work. Good range of motion. So you could pose this guy pretty good. It's not like O-ring, like, you know, old G.I. Joe's, but about as easy to pose as that. In fact, it's really like, because you can even bend it right at the, you know, at the chest. So you can kind of have him leaning back, right? So it's kind of like the bigger figures they make nowadays, but just on that smaller scale. Those belt moves, so the belt is a separate piece. I don't think it comes off, but it is a separate little piece on his waist. Let's see, maybe we can grab one of the swords out of here. Again, I'm trying to do this. There it goes. So it won't deafen everybody. Ooh, that could be tricky getting that into his hand. They do these hands nowadays that, yeah, I might need to do some work on getting that into his hand. I don't know if I could do that without potentially breaking it. Yeah. You kind of need to warm the plastic up for some of these. Yeah. I have a feeling if I mess with it, I'm gonna take his thumb off here. There. That's simulated what it'd look like holding the sword. But a very cool figure. I wish the shipping had been a little bit lower. That would have helped. I did not mind the pricing on the figure that much. It's about what I'd pay for stuff like this from Super 7. And frankly, it's got a lot better range of motion than what you get from Super 7. But the the shipping was more than I would pay for Super 7. That made it a little bit rough. So there we go. The other thing that I have review-wise... oh, what Man of War says here. When did the changes come to adding weaponry? Well done, McFarland. Yeah, I know. Let's hold that up again. Like, dude, you got pistol. You got, 3 different... Well, that's a shotgun, machine gun, and a rifle, basically. Yeah, it looks like the stand. So, I mean, it's a pretty impressive arsenal that they gave Blackhawk, which would come in handy if you got other figures similar size for them. But the other review I have for you, Rat Pfink and Boo Boo. Actually, the movie is Rat Pfink a Boo Boo. A Boo Boo. Now, there's 2 stories of why. One is that the guy doing the title screwed up, and they didn't have money to correct it. The guy who made it, Ray Dennis Steckler, says no. It's because on set, his daughter, who was real little, was saying, Rat Fink a Boo Boo, Rat Fink a Boo Boo, and they just liked the sound of it, and they went with it. So, this is a B movie. Big time B movie. It's almost what you would want to call like a garage band of movies. It started out, apparently, as a serious crime film. And when you watch the opening, which is a woman being assaulted by 3 thugs who steal her purse, and they're very creepy, you're kind of going, okay, I thought this was going to be sort of a comedy, like a parody of Batman, which of course was already a parody. Like, what am I in for here exactly? And, well, that's because it started out, it was going to be this serious crime movie. And then midway through making it, he decided to turn it into a Batman and Robin parody. So about 40 minutes in, it shifts when the hero and this guy who's like a gardener working for this woman who's been kidnapped, they head into like, I think it's supposed to be a closet, and they come out in their costumes, Rat Fink and Boo Boo. Let's see, I think I got it. There you go. And they're going to go fight crime. So it's a very abrupt thing. And you go, well, not great in a film. Yes, but like I said, this thing is like a garage band of films. It sort of works. I had a similar experience watching this as I did with Bowfinger, Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, a Frank Oz film, where I started watching Bowfinger, and I'm like going, this isn't very good. And I get a little further in, and I'm like, this is kind of bad. I get a little further in. I think this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And I went just a little further and said, I think I really like this movie all of a sudden. It's like it had to click. This was, well, I won't say I fell in love with this film, but I was watching another movie earlier in the day, and I turned it off about 20 minutes in. It was like a spaghetti Western. I'm like, it's not really worth it. It's not that good. I stuck through this entire movie, and I was kind of entertained. It is really stretched out. You could have fit this movie into about a half hour, probably. It's so weird. A guy in a gorilla suit shows up, which always, works for me. There's a weird musical scene at the end. There's a couple musical bits because they almost were going for like an Elvis parody as well. There's those two on their motorcycle. Yes. Rat Fink always rides in the sidecar standing up. They had no safety mechanisms whatsoever, but God bless him. You do get to see a lot of, I'm assuming LA. I don't know where they were, but a lot of exterior shots. And so that is Carolyn Brandt, who plays the, girl who gets kidnapped. She's the wife at the time of Ray Dennis Steckler, who produced, directed, wrote the movie. And she's actually pretty cool in it. I kind of liked her. But it's such an odd film. It really doesn't work in any way whatsoever. And somehow that makes it sort of work, if that makes any sense at all. So Rat, Pfink, and Boo Boo. I've heard about this thing for ages, never watched it. It's on Tubi. I threw it on yesterday and I stuck with it. And I think by the end, I actually kind of liked it. And I can't tell you why. I have no idea why. I can't say, well, they did great with the special effects. They didn't. The fight scene, no, they weren't that good. Well, there's a lot of comedy. It's just not really that funny. Well, there's music. It was, it was okay. It was, okay. I mean, look, Bob Burns, the great Bob Burns playing Kogar the gorilla. Thumbs up. I did enjoy him. But no, it's just one of those weird things that sort of just kind of worked for me by the time I got to the end of it. And I don't know why. What do I like about it? It's just something kind of endearing about something that's just this wrong. So there you go, folks. Those are my reviews for the week. Perfect 10, number 6. Awesome. Horace H Hoover, number 4. Awesome. McFarland Blackhawk looks rad. I haven't taken it out of the package yet. Flash Gordon. I'll give one thumb up at this point because the card art is like, it's a little off. I didn't love the card art, but I'm not that worried about that. But the figure looks really great. Very posable figure. I will end with this image that I found online. My favorite thing of the internet this week. Some kid sitting on a bed surrounded by comic books and posters in the 1970s. I zoomed in a bit. Marvel posters. You got Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange, Spidey, Iron Man, Conan. You got some Bruce Lee posters as well. And the comics I could make out. Planet of the Apes. I think the Phantom is in there. Fear. Fantastic Four. Giant-sized Avengers. Iron Fist. Mr. Miracle. And Marvel Team Up. And obviously a lot more than that. You know what I mean? Like, does that not just look like heaven? Do you not wish you could just spend an entire day just sitting on a bed reading comic books and just not caring about the world? Oh, how nice would that be? So that'll do it. Man of War says guilty pleasures require no justification. I agree. My attitude is if the pleasure is not technically like illegal or a horrific sin, you don't need to be guilty with it at all. It's just a pleasure. Doesn't matter if anybody else likes it. I do probably feel a little guilty about liking Rat, Pfink, and Boo Boo. What the hell is going on with that movie? What has it done to me? What's happening to me? Oh, and I said, yeah, I got that at Zia Records ages ago, man. And you know what? I decided I wasn't going to wash my hair this morning and stuff because I need to go work out in the yard. I'm like, I'm throwing a hat on because my hair is like all over the place. Crazy. But there we go. Favorite thing on the internet today is just a kid enjoying all the cool stuff of the 1970s that was out there for kids to enjoy. Hopefully you are enjoying your Sunday today. Man of War, thank you for being in the chat. Lady Wendelin, of course, as well. Everybody, prayers for Lady Wendelin. She is having some mega allergies today. Feels like crap. And she's still in there helping me out because I love her because she's great. But that'll do it for Dad's Den of Pop Culture today. Monday, I got another Thor review video. Thor number 344. Wednesday, I'm doing a review of King Kong Escapes from 1967. And on Friday, we're going to crack open Blackhawk. I think maybe the Red Tornado figure I got as well. Maybe the Grim Ghost from Mego. I'm going to maybe open up a few toys and look at them up close and personal. Those are videos I still have to make today. So I got some work set out for me. I got some weeds I got to pull. I got videos to make. I need to watch the second half of Grand Prix starring James Garner. So that'll do it for me, folks. God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And hopefully I will see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.